When you want to be successful in content creation, you have to have a content creation workflow as well as a content calendar. And that is exactly what I'm going to be showing you in today's video, because it is essential as a content creator or someone who's trying to utilize social media to know how to actually plan out your content and make sure you are consistent. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Gloria, and let's get to it. So the first thing we need to talk about is exactly what a content creation workflow is, as well as defining what a content calendar is. Now, I'm going to start with a content creation workflow because essentially there is a process towards content creation and you coming up with content pieces that you're going to post on social media. And that step one all the way to the final step where you have a complete content piece that you're going to post on social media is what we essentially call a content creation workflow. Whereas a content calendar is essentially a content schedule that is going to show you when you're going to create the content piece, how long it takes for you to create a content piece, and how many times you're going to post on social media. Because essentially, when you have a social media presence, there is a certain level of consistency you have to stick to so that you can build a routine around you as an individual or the creator, as well as the people who are actually consuming your content, so that they know when to expect from you and to learn from you as well. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started with the first step, which is figuring out what your content type is going to be. Now, I feel like I've sung this song for a very long time, but what you need to understand is that there are three types of content pieces or content expressions that you can have when you're creating content for social media. The first one is video content creation, which we are very accustomed to through shorts, TikToks, as well as YouTube videos and YouTube shorts, whatever the case. And then the second type of content expression or content type you can create is written media, where you have to copyright the content material and share it on social media. You can either do this on X, which is formerly called Twitter, or you can also have it on LinkedIn. And I love writing on LinkedIn. So if you need a tutorial on how to copyright, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below, and I'm going to share that video for you. And then the third type of content that you can create is audio content, which is famously used by podcasters and people who actually create long form interviews and share it on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube podcasts in general. Step number 2 is coming up with your content schedule. And guys, I do not just mean a simple content schedule like saying I'm gonna be posting every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. No, I actually mean you have to go into detail, because essentially this is going to guide every single process you have to go through when you're coming up with your content pieces. Now, the first thing that you have to figure out is when are going to be your post days. Because of course, from Monday to Friday, depending on the platform you choose, there is a specific number of posts you're supposed to do, so that one, your audience doesn't forget you're a creator. Secondly, you build that muscle of creating content on the platform. And thirdly, you get the algorithm to understand who you are, who you create for, and why they need to push out your content. So you need to figure out how are you going to realistically create content and post on that specific platform, so that you don't miss out on the chances to actually attract your kind of audience. And then the second thing you need to decide is going to be the number of posts. And I'm going to use Instagram for this example, because Instagram has a multitude of algorithms and you can create a multitude of content pieces on that specific platform. For example, you can create reels on Instagram, you can create stories on Instagram, as well as create carousels on Instagram. So you need to figure out what content pieces or what content types for a specific platform are you going to be doing. Are you going to be doing stories and then adding them to reels? Are you going to be doing all the three types of content, which is carousel, reels, as well as stories? Or are you going to be doing just one? And then the other thing you need to decide is, are you going to automate the process of posting on that specific platform? Or are you going to be scheduling your content so that it goes live even if you're not present? Now, I'm a big fan of automation and I honestly like scheduling out my content, but you can also decide to do it manually. For example, when I am posting on LinkedIn, I usually post it manually because LinkedIn as a platform does not really recommend or does not really take kindly when you schedule out your posts, especially if you're a content creator on the platform. But if you go to a platform like TikTok or even Instagram or YouTube, when you schedule out your content, it doesn't really affect the reach. So you need to weigh and see how much can you realistically do, especially in terms of posting if you're going to go manually, and if you're going to automate the process, is that something worth you taking a step and learning about? Because I'm not gonna lie to you, automation of social media posting and using social media tools is a learning curve, and you would want to know what is ahead of you if you make a decision with that magnitude. Step number 3 is to figure out which tools you're going to be using that are going to be essential for your content creation process. You need to understand that sometimes content creation is going to be a part-time job, and it takes a lot of time for you to complete everything, because essentially, depending on what type of content you're creating, there's a level of energy and a level of processes that goes behind the scenes. Now, the first tool you need to make use of is a calendar tool. For me, essentially, I like recommending Google Calendar because you can access it remotely from anywhere. Now, with Google Calendar, what essentially you're gonna do is you are going to create time blocks or creative blocks where you are going to use that specific time to create content for your social media platforms. And then the second tool that you need to have is a project management tool, which is essentially going to show you how that workflow process is going to look like. Now, in this particular video, I am going to use Clickup to show you the example, but there are so many other tools like Asana, we have Notion, we have Airtable, and so many other tools that you can use. But in this example, or in this particular video, I'm going to use Clickup in the next point to show you how you can set up your content creation workflow. And then the third tool that you need to have is going to be a social media scheduling tool. Now, this tool can either be in-platform scheduling, or it can be a third-party platform that you use to schedule out your content. Now, there are so many tools that exist out there, but if you're looking for a third-party tool, I would highly recommend Metricool, which is something that I personally use and I also use for my clients, mainly because Metricool usually has really nice data reporting and data analytics features, so you can be able to track and see how your content is performing on several platforms. So I'm gonna leave the links to each and every platform I've mentioned in the description, just in case you want to check them out and try them out for yourself. Now, for step 4, this is where we're actually going to build out your content creation workflow, and just as I've said in the previous step, I'm going to be using ClickUp for this example. Now, the first thing you have to do is to figure out which kind of content you're going to create. Now, in this particular example, I am going to assume that we are creating video content. And so we need to know that in video content, there is the idea generation aspect, there's the scripting aspect, there's the filming aspect, the editing aspect, as well as the scheduling and the description or the captions, etc. So this is the workflow that is going to happen for each and every video that we are going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to jump into ClickUp and we are going to create a space. Now, this space is going to go by your brand name. And once you've created that space, you are now going to list out a project. This project essentially is what you're going to be doing so that you can be able to create content, so that you can be able to follow through in the content creation process. And then we are going to list it out in form of a Kanban board. Now, this Kanban board essentially is important because it helps you visually move blocks as you complete the projects and the contents that you create for your specific social media platform. And then the next thing that you're gonna do is you are going to jump on your Google Calendar and you are going to time block when you're actually going to be creating this particular pieces of content, as well as completing the other tasks that need to happen, like editing, filming, scripting, so that you can be able to know and bulk create or batch finish what you need to do in order for you to come up with a content piece. And then step number 5 is to actually plan out your content calendar. Now, essentially what this means is you are going to set up what content piece goes live on which specific day. Now, say for example, we are posting 3 times a week on Instagram, and we are going to also be doing maybe 3 stories on the same particular day. What we're gonna do is we are gonna break this out into our content calendar. Now, there are 2 ways to actually do this. The first way is you can either leverage a social media management tool like Metricool, or you can actually create your social media posting calendar on Google Calendar. Now, I am going to use the second type. In this particular example, I am going to use Instagram. Now, since I am the kind of person who usually does 2 content pieces on Instagram, I'm going to assume you do the same. Now, this being the example, we are actually posting 2 stories, or rather 2 to 3 stories in the morning, which is around 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the morning, and then in the evening, that's when I am also going to be posting out my reel or my carousel, and I am posting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And as you can see, I have created everywhere where I'm supposed to post my content pieces, and you guys can see that this is how my content calendar looks like. Now, if you want me to do a tutorial showing you exactly a step-by-step plan of how I time block, as well as how I color code and ensure that I have everything in my calendar, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below, because I really love doing tutorials and showing you behind the scenes of how I get organized. Now, that is it with this particular video. I'm hoping that you guys liked it and found it helpful. If you did, make sure to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you have any questions about the creative workflow or anything to do with content creation, feel free to let me know in the comment section, because I would really love to do a tutorial for you guys where I take you behind the scenes so that you see what usually happens in terms of content creation. If you feel like sticking around, I did do a video talking about how to find content ideas. So if you're stuck in the ideation process and finding content ideas for your social media platform, I'm going to include that video right here, and I am going to see you in that particular video.